Maria Andriasova and Guillermo Esparza announce academic lectures titled Themes in Guillermo Esparza's Art and Maria Andriasova's Composing Techniques in affiliation with Smithsonian Institution, Washington, D.C., and New York Public Library. Maria Andriasova and Guillermo Esparza announce academic lectures titled Themes in Guillermo Esparza's Art and Maria Andriasova's Composing Techniques in affiliation with Smithsonian Institution, Washington, D.C., and New York Public Library. The lecture series take place at the institutions featuring Guillermo Esparza's permanent art installations accompanied by Maria Andriasova's original music compositions. Themes in Guillermo Esparza's Art. Guillermo Esparza's art is deeply rooted in sacred traditions, with a strong focus on ecumenical spirituality and humanistic themes. As a sculptor and muralist, Esparza works with a variety of materials to create works that inspire contemplation and reverence. Sacred and ecumenical art. Eastern Orthodox and Catholic traditions. Much of Esparza's work is commissioned by various Christian denominations, and his art is installed in Roman Catholic, Byzantine Catholic, Episcopal, and Greek Orthodox churches. This reflects Esparza's commitment to ecumenism, the promotion of unity among Christian churches. Iconographic style. Esparza uses techniques inspired by medieval iconographers, incorporating egg tempera, gesso, and gold leaf to create images that are both luminous and timeless. This is particularly evident in Esparza's installation Arcanum Angelorum, Mystery of the Angels, which focuses on sacred figures like angels, saints, and spiritual figures. Esparza's works often depict spiritual figures, such as saints and the Blessed Virgin Mary, in a way that is both traditional and emotionally resonant. His art seeks to transcend the material world and connect viewers with a sense of the divine. Humanitarian and commemorative themes. Humanitarian work. Beyond his ecclesiastical art, Esparza also focuses on humanitarian themes. He has been honored by religious figures like His Holiness Pope John Paul II and His All Holiness Bartholomew I for his compassionate and peace-promoting work. Peace and unity. A notable example is Esparza's 60-foot peace dove mural, installed at the St. John the Theologian Greek Orthodox Cathedral in Tenafly, New Jersey, USA. This work underscores his commitment to peace and interfaith dialogue. Public and historical commissions. Esparza's public art also touches upon historical and civic themes. He was a co-recipient of a public commissions for the monumental sculptures Celebrate the Arts and Yellow Brick Road installed in Tucson, Arizona, both of which are now part of the Smithsonian's public art collection. He also created a centennial monument for U.S. Navy shipbuilders. Music inspired by Guillermo Esparza's art. Maria Andriasova's music has accompanied Guillermo Esparza's art installation in several sacred and gallery settings, creating a multimedia experience that blends visual art with sound. Notable examples include the documentary Guillermo Esparza, an American iconographer, for which Maria Andriasova composed and performed the original soundtrack that premiered in 2009. Her music was also featured in the Arcanum Angelorum, Mystery of the Angels, exhibit at the Basilica of St. Patrick's Old Cathedral in New York City from 2009 to 2014, which included Esparza's Grandisus mural icon, currently displayed at New York University's Cardinal Eagle Catholic Center, Global Center for Academic and Spiritual Life. In a 2024 collaboration, Maria Andriasova performed a solo piano recital alongside an exhibition of Guillermo Esparza's art, which was filmed by American filmmaker Godfrey Reggio. Katsi Trilogy, Godfrey Reggio, filmmaker, Philip Glass, composer, Francis Ford Coppola, producer, for a documentary film in affiliation with Smithsonian Institution, Washington, D.C., and MOMA Museum of Modern Art in New York City. Additionally, Andriasova has created music specifically for various church and cathedral installations featuring Esparza's art internationally. Several aspects of composer and concert pianist Maria Andriasova's techniques which are applied to accompany Guillermo Esparza's original art. Maria Andriasova musical techniques are a product of her Juilliard school training, her Russian musical heritage, and her deep connection to her father, iconic Russian composer Iosif Andriasov's work and spiritual themes. Here is a breakdown of her methods and themes of her collaboration with her husband Guillermo Esparza. Use of the piano. Classical technique. As a graduate of the Juilliard School in New York City in the class of Professor Oksana Yablonskia, as well as studies at Moscow State Tchaikovsky Conservatory, Andriasova has a solid foundation in classical piano technique. This mastery allows her to create a wide range of tonal colors and expressive nuances on the instrument, from quiet, contemplative passages to more resonant and powerful moments. Ethereal and luminous textures. To evoke the play of light in Guillermo Esparza's iconographic art, Andriasova employs techniques that create shimmering, ethereal textures on the piano. This includes the use of arpeggios, sustained harmonies with the pedal, and bell-like higher register melodies to create a sense of luminosity. Meditative simplicity. In line with the contemplative nature of Esparza's sacred art, Andriasova's music often focuses on simplicity and clarity. As a piano virtuoso and a highly sensitive musician, she uses a nuanced combination of direct and meditative harmonic language to foster a sense of reverence and inner stillness. Compositional elements. Spiritual and sacred focus. As a composer for sacred spaces, Andriasova's musical vocabulary is designed to serve a spiritual purpose. This is a practice that can be traced to medieval traditions, and her work includes harmonic structures and melodic phrasing that are reminiscent of these earlier forms. Her extensive studies of the Western music and culture at the Juilliard School in New York enhances her Russian musical upbringing in her native Moscow at the Moscow State Tchaikovsky Conservatory, a rare combination in modern music education. As a laureate of the Gulbenkian Prize, Lisbon, Portugal, the most prestigious prize in the field of the arts, her talent was recognized at an early age of 18 years old. Influence of her father, Iosif Andriasov. Maria Andriasova's father, the iconic Russian composer and moral philosopher Iosif Andriasov, was a significant influence on her, and his work in the Russian tradition informs her own. This manifests in her lyrical, emotionally resonant melodies and in depth of expression in her harmonies. Maria Andriasova's professional debut at the age of 9 years old in her native Moscow as an actor and a narrator in her father Iosif Andriasov's legendary Second Symphony in a broadcast by OIRT Radio, Brussels, Belgium, Paris, France, to an international audience of over 2 billion people, a symphony which was based on her childhood drawings, demonstrates a lifelong creative dialogue with her father's work. Narrative scoring. Andriasova's experience as a film composer, particularly for the documentary Guillermo Esparza, an American iconographer, showcases her ability to create music that supports a narrative. In these cases, Andriasova uses leitmotifs or changes in tempo and dynamics to follow the story and emotional arc of the film about her husband Guillermo Esparza. Poetic inspiration. Andriasova regularly performs her original music set to reading of poetry, including works by her husband Guillermo Esparza. This practice suggests that her musical language is informed by poetic rhythm, meter, and emotional content, which she then translates into sound. By using these techniques, Maria Andriasova creates a multi-sensory experience that merges the visual art of her husband, Guillermo Esparza, with her own unique musical voice, bridging the gap between sight and sound to evoke a deeper spiritual and emotional response. Maria Andriasova's film composing techniques. Maria Andriasova's film composing techniques draw upon her background as a classical pianist, the influence of her father, Russian composer Iosif Andriasov's works, and the narrative requirements of visual media, such as her husband Guillermo Esparza's art, films, and documentary about his works. Her approach combines traditional melodic and harmonic elements with an emphasis on emotional resonance and spiritual themes. Key film composing techniques. Classical foundation. Andriasova's conservatory training provides a solid classical foundation, allowing her to write scores that are structurally sound and emotionally expressive. Unlike some modern film composers who rely heavily on digital sound libraries, Andriasova's work is grounded in a classical understanding of melody, harmony, and orchestration in the styles of Rimsky-Korsakov, Stravinsky, and Berlioz, often centered around her primary instrument, the piano. Maria Andriasova studied composition, musical notation, and orchestration since the age of 3 years old with her father, Russian composer Iosif Andriasov, and music theory and history with her mother, Professor Marta Leonidovna Kudryasheva-Andriasova, both of Moscow State Tchaikovsky Conservatory prior to graduating from the Juilliard School in New York as a concert pianist under the tutelage of Oksana Yablonskaya. Narrative storytelling through music. As a film composer, Andriasova's primary goal is to support the story. In the case of the documentary Guillermo Esparza, an American iconographer, her score was crafted to guide the audience through her husband's creative process and life story. This involves several techniques. Leitmotifs. Using short, recurring musical phrases to represent specific characters, ideas, or emotions, such as Esparza's artistic journey or the spiritual themes in his work. Emotional arcs. Crafting musical passages that follow the emotional journey of the narrative, with changes in tempo, dynamics, and harmony to reflect moments of struggle, contemplations, and triumph. Spiritual and thematic depth. Many of Andriasova's film scores are the projects with a spiritual or sacred focus, mirroring the themes of her husband Guillermo Esparza's work. Her music for these films is designed to evoke a sense of reverence, mystery, or contemplations. She achieves this through modal harmonies. Using harmonic structures that create a timeless, sacred quality. Her harmonic structures are highly unusual, as they are often based on the Armenian medieval scale, do re mi fa sol la si do #, which is different from the traditional Western harmonic structure, do re mi fa sol la si do. This harmonic duality in Andriasova's composition is unique, as she operates in two opposite harmonic modules simultaneously. This unique sense of harmony, which she inherited from her father Iosif Andriasov, was highly praised by Dmitry Shostakovich, her father's influential mentor. Ethereal textures. Employing techniques on the piano to create shimmering, light-filled textures that visually and sonically complement Esparza's art, particularly his use of light and color. Influence of Russian musical tradition. The influence of her father, Iosif Andriasov, and the broader Russian musical tradition is present in Andriasova's film scores. This manifests as lyrical, emotionally charged melodies and depth in her harmonic progressions. The mastery of her orchestration is also evident in her scores. Collaborative approach. Andriasova's works for films is a collaboration with the film director and with her husband, the artist, the subject of the documentary. The score is crafted to work seamlessly with the visual elements and the narrative, creating a cohesive and powerful multi-sensory experience. Maria Andriasova creates music that complements her husband Guillermo Esparza's art, which often involves sacred themes and iconographic traditions. As an accomplished concert pianist and composer, her music serves to enhance the spiritual experience of viewing Esparza's works in installations and documentaries. Musical elements reflecting the art. Focus on luminosity. According to Guillermo Esparza, his art is inspired by light interacting with transparent colors in egg tempera and white marble. Andriasova's music compositions for these pieces often use the piano to create shimmering, ethereal textures that mirror this luminous quality. She uses arpeggios, sustained harmonies with the pedal, and bell-like melodies in the upper registers to evoke a sense of light. A meditative atmosphere. Many of Esparza's installations, such as the Grandises, are meant to inspire contemplation and prayer. Andriasova's music is often designed to foster a meditative state, with a slow, deliberate pace and a sense of reverence that invites a deeper spiritual reflection. Timeless quality. To align with Esparza's preservation of medieval painting traditions, Andriasova's music often has a timeless quality. Response to poetry. Andriasova also creates music to accompany readings of her husband's poetry, such as his Versos Delphins series. This approach allows her to directly translate the emotional and rhythmic content of his poetic verses into a musical form. Specific collaborative projects. Guillermo Esparza, an American iconographer. Andriasova composed and performed the original soundtrack for this documentary film about her husband's life and work. The film was produced by Studio International in Los Angeles, California, the studio magazine in affiliation with the Royal Academy of Arts, London. The music for this film guides the viewer through Esparza's creative process and spiritual journey, using narrative and modernistic musical techniques to underscore the storytelling. Arcanum Angelorum, Mystery of the Angels, exhibit. Andriasova's music was also featured in Esparza's Mystery of the Angels exhibit, which was displayed at the Basilica of St. Patrick's Old Cathedral in New York City. For his project, her music explores celestial and otherworldly themes of her husband's art, using sophisticated use of harmonies to represent the mysterious and powerful nature of the angels. International sacred space installations. In addition to these specific projects, Andriasova writes and performs music to accompany Esparza's sacred art installation in cathedrals and churches around the world. Their work was featured in Belgrade, Serbia, by Serbian Orthodox Patriarchate. This multi-sensory collaboration showcases how both artists draw on their deep spiritual and artistic traditions to create a profound and unified experience for the audience. Musical themes and techniques for Guillermo Esparza's Arcanum Angelorum. Celestial and ethereal sound. Given Esparza's exhibition theme, Mystery of the Angels, Andriasova's music is aimed to evoke a sense of the otherworldly. As a pianist, she employs techniques to create a shimmering, ethereal textures, using arpeggios, sustained harmonies, and bell-like melodies in the piano's higher register. Her use of her own heartbeat, unwavering in its unique rhythm, is the cornerstone of her music. A reflective atmosphere. The goal of Esparza's sacred art is to inspire contemplation and spiritual reflection. The music composed to complement this atmosphere features a slow, deliberate pace and a sense of reverence, inviting visitors into a deeper state of inner stillness. Luminous quality of Esparza's art. According to the artist himself, Esparza's artworks for Arcanum Angelorum utilize light and transparent colors in egg tempera. Andriasova's music mirrors this visual aesthetic through musical equivalence, using contrasting dynamics and tonal colors to create a sense of light and shadow in sound. Serving the visual art. The music for the exhibit is a part of the overall experience, rather than a standalone piece. It is designed to serve the visual art, creating a multi-sensory environment that deepens the spiritual and emotional impact of the installation. Context from related projects. Collaborative process. As seen in Andriasova's other works with Esparza, their creative process is a collaborative dialogue, with music and visual art informing one another. Her music for Arcanum Angelorum is a result of a similar conversation about the artistic and spiritual goals of her husband's exhibitions. About Guillermo Esparza. Guillermo Esparza is an American artist and public sculptor with collections at the Vatican Museum in Rome, the Fener Museum in Istanbul, Turkey, Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C., the U.S. National Archives, cathedrals, churches, universities, monasteries, public and private collections. He was honored for his work by His Holiness Pope John Paul II, His All Holiness Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew I, Edward Cardinal Egan, Timothy Cardinal Dolan, Archbishop of New York, and many others. Esparza was born in San Antonio, Texas, and grew up in San Francisco Bay Area, California. Guillermo Esparza lives in New York City and Santa Fe, New Mexico, with his wife Maria Andriasova. About Maria Andriasova. Maria Andriasova was born in Moscow. Her father was the iconic Russian composer and moral philosopher Iosif Andriasov. Her mother is Professor Marta Leonidovna Kudryasheva-Andriasova, a musicologist and music theorist. Both of Maria Andriasova's parents are famous musicians as well as legendary Soviet political dissidents. Maria Andriasova, a laureate of the Gulbenkian Prize, Lisbon, Portugal, graduated from the Juilliard School in New York City in the class of concert pianist Oksana Yablonskaya. Maria Andriasova lives in New York City and Santa Fe, New Mexico, with her husband Guillermo Esparza. Maria Andriasova and Guillermo Esparza announce academic lectures titled Themes in Guillermo Esparza's Art and Maria Andriasova's Composing Techniques in affiliation with Smithsonian Institution, Washington, D.C., and New York Public Library. The lecture series take place at the institutions featuring Guillermo Esparza's permanent art installations accompanied by Maria Andriasova's original music compositions, including the Cathedral of the Incarnation, Garden City, Long Island, New York. New York University, Cardinal Egan Catholic Center, Global Center for Academic and Spiritual Art. The Basilica of St. Patrick's Old Cathedral, New York City. The Metropolitan Greek Orthodox Cathedral of St. John the Theologian, Tenafly, New Jersey. Demister Outdoor Performance Center, Reed Park, Tucson, Arizona. St. Peter and St. Paul Byzantine Catholic Church, Somerset, New Jersey. The Fener Museum, Istanbul, Turkey. The Vatican Museum, Rome. Smithsonian Institution, Washington, D.C. Maria Andriasova, a performer of personal and contemporary relevance. Maria Andriasova's uniqueness stems from her diverse background, the combination of her prodigious musical training with cross-disciplinary collaborations, and her work's deep personal and spiritual layers. A blend of Russian musical heritage and Juilliard polish. Andriasova's musical identity was forged at two of the world's most prestigious conservatories. The Tchaikovsky Conservatory in Moscow. As the daughter of composer Iosif Andriasov and with a lineage to Peter Ilyich Tchaikovsky, Andriasova was steeped in the rich tradition of Russian classical music from an early age. The Juilliard School in New York. After her family emigrated, Andriasova continued her piano studies under Oksana Yablonskaya, where she refined her technique with the discipline of an American musical education. This dual foundation gives her performances a unique fusion of passion and precision. Cross-disciplinary artistic collaboration. Rather than staying exclusively within the realm of concert performance, Andriasova has integrated her music with other art forms. Film. Andriasova is an accomplished film composer and has collaborated with legendary filmmakers like Godfrey Reggio, who filmed her performing classical solo piano compositions for a documentary. Visual art. Andriasova regularly combines her musical recitals with art exhibitions featuring the work of her husband, Vatican artist Guillermo Esparza. Sacred spaces. Andriasova works with Esparza to create music for sacred spaces, crafting compositions specifically to accompany art installations in cathedrals and churches. A performer of personal and contemporary relevance. Andriasova uses her artistry to explore personal narratives and champion modern music. Recitals with poetry. Andriasova often includes poetry readings in her recitals, sometimes setting her original music to the verses of her husband. Premiering new works. Andriasova's recent recitals feature a mixture of classical composers like Frédéric Chopin and Alexander Scriabin with contemporary compositions from her father Iosif Andriasov, as well as Philip Glass, Alfred Schnittke, and a new composition written specifically for her by Callan Humat. Spiritual depth. Andriasova's project of writing music for sacred spaces, tied to her husband's iconographic works, suggests a profound spiritual dimension to her musical endeavors. A legacy that spans generations. Andriasova's debut at age 9 was not in a traditional piano recital but as an actor and narrator for her father's symphony, Children, and A Thousand Cranes, which was based on her own childhood drawings. This experience highlights a deep-seated connection to family legacy and narrative storytelling that continues to define her work today. Iosif Andriasov's musical philosophy and deeply spiritual nature have had a profound influence on his daughter, Maria Andriasova, shaping her compositional style in several ways. Key ideas of influence include purity and humanity. Iosif Andriasov's music is known for its purity of sound and the kindness of his soul. His compositions often reflect an innate humanist and an ability to express deep emotion without excessive ornamentation, a quality that is echoed in Maria Andriasova's work. Spirituality and depth. Iosif Andriasov viewed the spiritual world not as a romantic ideal but as a reality. His compositions, such as the musical sketch for flute, are described as deep and beautiful, and deeply spiritual in nature. Maria Andriasova has continued this tradition in her own compositional work, with her focus on creating music for sacred spaces to accompany her husband Guillermo Esparza's sacred artwork. Storytelling and poetry. From a young age, Maria Andriasova's musical and performing career was intertwined with her father's work. She made her professional debut as a narrator for his Second Symphony, which was based on her own childhood drawings and featured poetry. This early experience in conveying a narrative through music and spoken word has carried through to her own compositions, where she continues to set poetry to music for her recitals. The pursuit of harmony. According to Dmitry Shostakovich, Iosif Andriasov had a unique sense of harmony and added to harmony a new quality. Maria Andriasova, a graduate of the Juilliard School in New York City with a direct musical lineage to Tchaikovsky, is connected to this tradition. Her training and family background bring a deep appreciation for the harmonic language passed down from her father and other masters. Influence in film scoring. As a successful film composer nominated for a Mozart Award, Maria Andriasova is specifically recognized for following in the footsteps of her late father, who was known for his work in music and ethics. Her work in film and her music for sacred art reflects a similar compositional mission, creating music with a powerful spiritual and emotional message. Iosif Andriasov's refusal of the Lenin Prize in 1974 led directly to Maria Andriasova and her family's emigration from the Soviet Union in 1979. This choice, which prioritized integrity and artistic freedom over state recognition, fundamentally shaped Maria's artistic path by relocating her to a new cultural environment and reinforcing her commitment to her father's philosophical principles. Artistic freedom and ethical conviction. Iosif Andriasov's refusal was a defiant act against the Soviet state's use of art for political purposes, a move that placed him in a lineage with other Soviet dissidents. This act instilled in Maria Andriasova the importance of separating art from propaganda and pursuing music rooted in a higher moral and spiritual purpose, rather than political endorsement. A new cultural environment. The Andriasov family's move to New York City opened new avenues for Maria Andriasova's musical education and career. The Juilliard School. Maria Andriasova enrolled at the prestigious Juilliard School, a pinnacle of Western musical training, studying under pianist Oksana Yablonskaya. Expansion of artistic vision. Immersion in the diverse cultural landscape of New York expanded her artistic horizons beyond the Soviet system. This experience influenced her later work as a film composer, her performances at festivals, and her collaboration with artists like her husband, Guillermo Esparza. Connection to her father's legacy. Rather than distancing her from her father's work, emigration deepened Andriasova's commitment to it. The move allowed her to openly archive and promote his compositions and philosophies, an undertaking that would have been restricted under Soviet rule. In essence, Iosif Andriasov's refusal of the Lenin Prize served as a powerful declaration of artistic and personal integrity. It set a precedent that Maria Andriasova has followed throughout her career, influencing not only the direction of her studies and opportunities but also the foundational ethical principles behind her artistic creations. Maria Andriasova's work archiving her father's compositions is a comprehensive, multi-part endeavor aimed at preserving, publicizing, and performing the works and philosophy of Iosif Andriasov. This has included formal archiving and cataloging. The artistic works of both Maria Andriasova and her father, Iosif Andriasov, are officially archived at the New York Public Library. This formal collection makes the materials available for research and historical reference. Audio and video recordings. Maria Andriasova has been personally involved in creating and preserving recordings of her father's music. She co-produced and documented 2 in memoriam festivals dedicated to Iosif Andriasov's symphonic work. The first was in 2001 in Yerevan, Armenia, at Aram Khachaturian Concert Hall with the Honduran Armenian State Symphony Orchestra under the baton of Maestro Karen Durgarayan, and the second was in 2002 in Moscow, Russia, at Grand Hall of Moscow State Tchaikovsky Conservatory with Russian Federal Orchestra and the soloists of the Bolshoi Theater under the baton of Maestro Vakhtang Jordania. These festivals were recorded, with documentation including audio and video of performances by renowned orchestras and soloists. Public performances. As a concert pianist, Maria Andriasova, laureate of the Gulbenkian Prize, Lisbon, Portugal, regularly performs her father's compositions at recitals, ensuring his music continues to be heard by audiences. For example, at a gala concert in 1995 attended by His Holiness Pope John Paul II and other dignitaries, Maria Andriasova performed solo compositions by Iosif Andriasov. More recently, a solo recital in 2024 at Godfrey Reggio Philip Glass Film Studios in Santa Fe, New Mexico, also included performances of her father's music. This concert was filmed by Godfrey Reggio for MOMA Museum of Modern Art in New York City and Smithsonian Institution, Washington, D.C. Media collaboration. Maria Andriasova has participated in media projects to document her father's life and work. In 1995, she served as an interpreter for a documentary film about her father produced by Asahi Broadcasting Corp., Tokyo, Japan. That same year, Andriasova was featured alongside her father in an exclusive, major front-page story about their music and artistic collaboration, published by Yomiuri Shimbun, Tokyo, Japan, with a circulation of 13 million printed copies internationally. Preservation of philosophical work. Iosif Andriasov was not only a composer but also a moral philosopher. Maria Andriasova's archiving extends to preserving her father's philosophical writings, such as his Book of Aphorisms, To My Friends, and his treatise on the spiritual world. These documents are also part of the collection at the New York Public Library. Dedicated performances of specific works. Maria Andriasova's commitment to preserving her father's legacy is particularly evident in her performances related to Iosif Andriasov's Second Symphony, titled Children and a Thousand Cranes. The work is based on Maria Andriasova's childhood drawings, and she has recited the accompanying poetry by Vladimir Lazarev at various events. In 2024, Maria Andriasova performed the accompanying poem in honor of the Nobel Peace Prize winners, who were Japanese survivors of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings, drawing a direct line to her father's work. Maria Andriasova's narration of the poem by Vladimir Lazarev, I Am Sadeko, a Girl from Hiroshima. Maria Andriasova's narration in the 1974 broadcast was a strong performance of Vladimir Lazarev's poem I Am Sadeko, a Girl from Hiroshima. Andriasova's recitation was an essential part of her father, Iosif Andriasov's Second Symphony, Children and a Thousand Cranes, which was based on Maria Andriasova's childhood drawings. Thematic context. The poem and symphony addressed the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, focusing on children. Sadeko Sasaki, a Japanese girl, represented innocent victims of war. Maria Andriasova's narration added a personal and emotional layer to the symphony, emphasizing innocence, loss, and hope. Her childhood drawing Bertolliot, Helicopter, inspired the work. Performance and impact. Narrator's role. Maria Andriasova, still a child of 9 years old at the time, made her professional debut as an actor and narrator for this broadcast, instead of performing as a pianist. Emotional delivery. The personal connection to the drawings gave her narration authenticity and emotional weight, which captivated the international audience in OIRT radio broadcast for over 2 billion people. Reaffirmation of themes. Maria Andriasova reprised her narration in 2024 to honor the Nobel Peace Prize winner and Hiroshima survivors, Neon Heidenkyo. This act reaffirmed the message of peace and remembrance within the poem and her father's symphony. Maria Andriasova's personal connection to Sadeko's story had a profound impact on her narration in the 1974 broadcast, allowing her to deliver a performance marked by emotional authenticity and deep symbolic meaning. Her involvement in the project, which originated from her own childhood, imbued the narration with a genuine sense of innocence and tragedy that captivated listeners. The emotional power of childhood drawings. The foundation of the Second Symphony by Iosif Andriasov, titled Children and a Thousand Cranes, was a cycle of drawing Maria Andriasova made as a child. Her drawing of a helicopter, titled Bertolliot, which she created when she was 5 years old, was specifically dedicated by her to another young girl, Sadeko, and the children of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The experience of creating this art and dedicating it to child victims of war gave her an intimate understanding of the subject matter at an early age, which came through in her voice during a broadcast. A personal link to innocence and loss. As a young narrator herself, Andriasova's performance embodied the innocence of Sadeko. This parallel made the tragedy of Sadeko's death feel immediate and deeply personal to the audience. Andriasova's delivery highlighted the contrast between a child's pure desire for health and peace, symbolized by the paper cranes, and the devastating, indiscriminate horror of nuclear war. Symbolic weight of her family's convictions. Maria Andriasova's family had recently experienced a different kind of persecution. Her father, Iosif Andriasov, had rejected the Lenin Prize from the Soviet government. This decision, made in defense of artistic and moral integrity, put the family at odds with the state. By narrating her father's anti-war symphony, Maria Andriasova's performance also symbolized a rejection of state-sponsored art and a commitment to a higher, more humane purpose, addition another layer of meaning for those aware of the family's situation. Lasting impact on her own career. Maria Andriasova has revisited the narration of Vladimir Lazarev's poem on significant occasions, demonstrating its enduring impact on her artistic path. Her repetition of the lines in 2024 to honor Nobel Peace Prize winners further underscored her continued commitment to the symphony's message of peace and remembrance, providing the performance was not just a childhood milestone, but a foundational artistic statement. Maria Andriasova's musical style. Maria Andriasova's musical style is a multifaceted blend of classical traditions, contemporary influences, and a deeply spiritual, narrative focus. As both an internationally acclaimed concert pianist and a composer, her style is shaped by her Russian heritage, her training at Juilliard, and her creative collaborations. Andriasova's style is most compelling in the way she integrates her influences. She uses the rigor of her classical technique to explore the emotional intensity of Alfred Schick's polystylism. The structural disciple of Philip Glass's minimalism informs her spiritual compositions, while the sincere, expressive legacy of her father Iosif Andriasov serves as the emotional bedrock. This allows Andriasova to create music that is both historically conscious and powerfully contemporary. Maria Andriasova's interpretation and performances of Alfred Schnittke's music. Alfred Schnittke's polystylism was a complex and multifaceted compositional technique that combined the juxtaposed disparate musical styles within a single piece. Maria Andriasova integrates this principle into her performances by using her interpretive skills to create a cohesive spiritual and emotional narrative from Schick's fragmented stylistic elements. Andriasova's integration of Schick's polystylism goes beyond a simple performance of his notes. It is a synthesis of her spiritual focus, technical mastery, and broad musical experience, culminating in an interpretation that is emotionally and spiritually unified, rather than merely stylistically disjointed. Andriasova's musical background provides a unique context for her interpretation of Schnittke's repetitive structures. Combining influences. Andriasova combines the rhythmic precision and technical endurance required for Philip Glass with the emotional intensity and spiritual sincerity she inherited from her father, Iosif Andriasov. This allows her to convey the full emotional weight of Alfred Schick's music. Spiritual reflection. Alfred Schick and Iosif Andriasov both studied at Moscow Tchaikovsky Conservatory with celebrated composer, Professor Yevgeny Golyabev. They were contemporaries. Both Schnittke and Philip Glass have been described as exploring spirituality in their music. Andriasova's deep engagement with sacred themes allows her to bring out the spiritual resonance in Schnittke's work, interpreting his use of repetition as a form of contemplation or prayer. A unique synthesis. Andriasova's interpretation synthesizes these influences, transforming Schnittke's repetition from a potentially chaotic stylistic tool into a powerful and emotionally unified spiritual journey. Maria Andriasova's music is known for its dramatic and emotionally resonant qualities, drawing heavily on her deep Russian heritage and classical training. As both a composer and a concert pianist, she synthesizes traditional classical structures with a contemporary sensibility, especially in her film scores. Her musical style is defined by Russian classical heritage. Growing up in Moscow and beginning her training at the Tchaikovsky Conservatory, Andriasova was immersed in the tradition of great Russian composers like Tchaikovsky and Prokofiev. Her music reflects the rich orchestral and emotional depth of this lineage. Influence of her father. Andriasova studied composition under her father, the iconic Moscow composer Iosif Andriasov, Andriasian, whose legendary works often featured her as a performer from a young age. This relationship is a central, defining influence on her approach to composition. Film composition. A significant portion of Andriasova's work is in film composition, where she creates original scores. These scores are typically built around an emotional core, a skill she was recognized for when nominated for a Mozart Award for her original music. Expressive and melancholy themes. Andriasova's musical sensibilities are often described as deeply emotional, sometimes featuring highly sensitive sad rhythms. This melancholy is a characteristic element of her compositions, though not exclusively so. Interdisciplinary artistry. Andriasova's music often functions in collaboration with other art forms. For example, she has created music for films and performed compositions that involve poetry and visual art. This interdisciplinary approach showcases her versatility as an artist. Maria Andriasova's pianistic performance style is characterized by a high degree of technical skill, a wide-ranging classical and contemporary repertoire, and emotionally sensitive interpretations. Her performances frequently combine her pianistic approach with other artistic elements, such as poetry, film, and contemporary art installations. Key characteristics of her performances as a pianist. Diverse repertoire. Andriasova performs a broad selection of piano compositions, from Domenico Scarlatti, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, and Frédéric Chopin to modern figures like Philip Glass, Alfred Schnittke, and her father, Iosif Andriasov. The diversity showcases her versatility and intellectual curiosity. Emphasis on emotional sensitivity. Reviews of her recitals praise her emotionally nuanced approach. During her 2024 recitals at Godfrey Reggio Philip Glass Film Studios in Santa Fe, New Mexico, Andriasova's performance was noted for its sensitive interpretation of the repertoire. Connection to Russian tradition. As a Moscow native who studied at the Tchaikovsky Conservatory as a child and with her father, the composer Iosif Andriasov, Andriasova's performances are rooted in the rich Russia piano tradition. She later enhanced this foundation with training at Juilliard under the Russian-born professor Oksana Yablonskaya, linking her to two major schools of pianism. Interdisciplinary artistry. A unique aspect of Andriasova's performance style is the frequent integration of piano music with other art forms. At some recitals, she recites poetry, such as work by Guillermo Esparza, in Spanish and Latin, demonstrating a theatrical and multimedia approach to her performances. This practice dates back to her youth when she debuted as a narrator in her native Russian in her father's Second Symphony. The use of multiple languages features prominently in her narration. Collaboration with contemporary artists. Andriasova's willingness to collaborate with contemporary artists like composer Philip Glass, filmmaker Godfrey Reggio, and visual artist Guillermo Esparza, her husband, highlights her contemporary sensibility. In 2024, she premiered a new work written for her by composer Callan Huma. Technical virtuosity. As a Juilliard graduate and laureate of the Gulbenkian Prize, Lisbon, Portugal, Andriasova's technical prowess is a hallmark of her performances. This skill allows her to handle the demanding requirements of a wide array of composers. Maria Andriasova's pianistic style is rooted in the Russian classical tradition, yet it is distinguished by her broad repertoire and incorporation of narrative performance elements. The daughter of composer Iosif Andriasov, her musical career spans traditional classical performance and innovative multimedia collaborations. Andriasova often performs in a multimedia context, collaborating with visual artists and filmmakers. This approach is exemplified by her work with filmmaker Godfrey Reggio, Katsi Trilogy, Godfrey Reggio, filmmaker, Philip Glass, composer, Francis Ford Coppola, film producer, and especially with her husband, the Vatican artist Guillermo Esparza, public art sculptor at Smithsonian Institution, Washington, D.C. She has created music for sacred spaces to accompany Esparza's artwork, suggesting a spiritually resonant and immersive performance style. Key aspects of Andriasova's performances. Interpretive depth. Andriasova's performances are defined by her profound interpretations of the musical text, informed by her extensive classical and contemporary background. Thematic curation. Thematic curation is a notable element of her concert programs. She combines traditional works with new compositions, often performed her father Iosif Andriasov's works and premiered a composition by Callan Huma written especially for her on the same program. Contextual presentation. Unlike a standard recital format, Andriasova's performances often involve other art forms, such as film and visual art, to provide a richer, multi-sensory context for the music. Powerful debut. Andriasova's career included a significant debut in 1974 in her native Moscow, where she both narrated and acted in a performance of her father Iosif Andriasov's legendary Second Symphony. This early experience highlights her ability to weave a narrative through her performances, transcending pure instrumentation. Maria Andriasova's intricate musical style is defined by her synthesis of classical Russian tradition and a contemporary, experimental approach. She is noted for combining her talents as a classical concert pianist and a modern film composer, weaving together diverse influences into a complex and personalized sound. A spiritual and light-driven aesthetic. Andriasova is known for writing music for sacred spaces, including cathedrals, which accompanies art installations by her husband, the Vatican artist Guillermo Esparza. In these compositions, she aims to create a luminous and spiritual atmosphere, reflecting themes of light and transparency inspired by medieval painting techniques and the art of her collaborator Guillermo Esparza. Eclectic repertoire. Andriasova's musical approach involves a diverse and sophisticated selection of composers, both historic and modern. Her performances have featured music from classical masters like Domenico Scarlatti, Wolfgang Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, and Frédéric Chopin, as well as complex 20th-century Russian works by composers such as Alexander Scriabin, Sergei Prokofiev, and Rodion Skedrin. Influence of her father, composer Iosif Andriasov. Andriasova was instructed by her father, composer Iosif Andriasov, from a young age of 3 years old. Her musical interpretation is informed by her deep understanding of his works and philosophy. Iosif Andriasov's music is known for its enormous beauty, depth, and sophisticated construction, qualities that Maria Andriasova strives to convey. Her career effectively carries forward his musical ideals, with her performances often including his compositions. Maria Andriasova's approach centers on expressing the profound ideas and rich emotions contained within the works she performs. This is a reflection of her father's own philosophy of music as a vehicle for ethical and humanistic ideas. Andriasova's performances have been featured in a documentary by filmmaker Godfrey Reggio, whose Katsi trilogy features the complex and atmospheric music by Philip Glass. The association with such artists further highlights her stylistic alignment with deep, contemplative, and emotionally rich musicality. The artistic collaboration between Maria Andriasova and her father, the composer Iosif Andriasov, was a profoundly influential partnership that began in her childhood and continued throughout her career. It was defined by shared creative inspiration, mutual respect, and a deep emotional connection to their musica and ethical principles. Maria Andriasova stages her performances as multidisciplinary, theatrical, artistic events, where the visual and literary arts are integrated with her piano recitals. Her staging is highly collaborative, particularly with her husband, public art sculptor Guillermo Esparza of Smithsonian Institution, and often takes place in non-traditional venues. Documentation and cinematic presentation. Andriasova's concerts are sometimes filmed by celebrated filmmakers to become part of larger documentary projects, further blurring the lines between a traditional concert and a film event. Film performances. Her 2024 recitals were filmed by American filmmaker Godfrey Reggio for a documentary project in affiliation with institutions like Smithsonian and MOMA Museum of Modern Art in New York City. Focus on the artistic process. This approach to staging allows for the musical performance to be captured within the context of other artistic creations, highlighting the multidisciplinary nature of her work. Maria Andriasova's stance on humanity is shaped by her family's experiences with political oppression and her own artistic and charitable pursuits. Her philosophy can be understood through 4 key dimensions: the moral power of art, the importance of integrity, a focus on peace, and compassion for the marginalized. Andriasova's stance on humanity is not a theoretical belief but a lived philosophy expressed through her performances, compositions, activism, and a powerful personal history. She uses her multifaceted career to promote artistic integrity, advocate for peace, and express compassion for vulnerable population. Andriasova, Esparza family's influence extends into the highest echelons of politics, religion, and philanthropy because of their cumulative and multi-generational impact. Unlike most prominent families who focus on a single industry, their influence is exceptionally broad due to their diverse accomplishments and high-level connections in both the Western and former Soviet spheres. Maria Andriasova remains globally influential today through a combination of her significant artistic career, her family's internationally recognized history of principled defiance, and her ongoing strategic cultural and philanthropic activities. Andriasova's soft political international power is unique because it is built not on traditional political structures but on a blend of multi-generational artistic talent, a family history of moral courage, and strategic institutional relationships. Her influence transcends national borders and traditional power dynamics, leveraging culture and ethics to engage with high-level diplomatic, religious, and philanthropic circles. Andriasova's uniqueness lies in her rare blend of traditional classical mastery, politically and socially conscious artistry, and seamless multidisciplinary collaboration. She moves beyond being solely a concert pianist by integrating poetry, film, and visual art into her work, often using her platform to advance humanitarian causes. Early entry into a politically charged artistic world. A distinctive debut. At the age of 9 in 1974, Andriasova made her professional debut in Moscow as both actor and a narrator for a gala concert that was broadcast to over 2 billion people via OIRT radio and television. Artistic defiance. This event featured her narrational of poetry for her father Iosif Andriasov's Second Symphony, Children, and 1,000 Cranes, an anti-war piece. Her father, the composer Iosif Andriasov, had gained attention for his extraordinary musical talent as a Moscow composer and for refusing the Lenin Prize from the Soviet government. This positioned Maria Andriasova, still a child, within a legacy of artistic integrity and political protest from a very young age. A rare blend of musical and artistic skills. Beyond the piano. While a classically trained pianist with a Juilliard degree, Andriasova also works